Welcome to another edition of Preps Plus Extra. How you doing? I'm Mark Stewart, Preps editor of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Joining me as always, J.R. Radcliffe, sports editor of Now Newspapers. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was good. We had a little bit of travel, a lot of football, a little turkey, and glad to be back after we took a week off last week following the state football championships.
Right, and three programs who probably had good Thanksgivings from a football standpoint: Homestead, Arrowhead, Catholic Memorial. Each won a state title a couple weeks ago, as you noted. As we wrap up the football season here and we move into December later this week, just give me your final thoughts on those. On those state championship games.
Yeah, well, in Division III, I was surprised, not necessarily that Memorial won, but definitely surprised by the margin of victory with Wapaka. They won 42-7. It was the third undefeated team that they'd beaten in the playoffs, and they just got on a roll late. They were a hot team, and they blazed all the way to their first WIAA state title. I do feel like every year there's kind of a player that maybe we knew about before the season, but we didn't really emphasize necessarily. And a guy like Matt Hubley, who was certainly a well-regarded player coming into the year, he really popped over the course of the season. You know, he ended up with a scholarship to Wisconsin, which I think we kind of, I mean, I don't want to say we didn't see it coming, something like that, but it was a little bit of a surprise. You know, we didn't even, he wasn't really on a lot of radar. And then, you know, to have him have the game he had in the state championship game, 199 yards rushing. He ends up as the state, the AP player of the year in the state. He wasn't even the offensive player of the year in the conference, and he winds up as AP state player of the year, and the Crusaders have a title. So his stature kind of rose along with Catholic Memorial's throughout the course of the postseason.
Yeah, and on the note of Catholic Memorial, I guess as you know, I was also happy for Bill Young's won a lot of state titles as in the private school association. As you noted, this was the school's first WIAA title. So it was nice to see him get that title. You know, it was also nice to see Homestead, you know, get back and not only snap Wanakee's long winning streak, but you know, just add another title to their mantle. You know, it's nice when you can, they've had that sustained excellence. 99 and 2006 and I think 2008, and then with a whole new group of kids.
Yeah, and that was a big surprise. Not necessarily that they were able to beat Wanakee, which is, let's not forget the gold standard of football in the state of Wisconsin the last several years with a 48-game winning streak, but to shut them out, first time anybody had shut out Wanakee since 2005. And, I'm sure some people will look at it and say, well, Homestead dropped down to Division II, so it wasn't the same as maybe those other titles, which were Division I. But to me, it's indisputable that Wanakee is in the same class as any of the best programs in the state. To beat them is truly a landmark victory and definitely a tremendous performance for the Homestead defense and for Coach Dave Keel, whose team maybe wasn't thought of as a state title contender before the season, and they brought home another gold ball. Yeah,
and you talked about gold standard. We can't then talk football or wrap up our football discussion without Arrowhead, which pretty much did what I think we thought they were going to do in the finals. And congratulations to Coach Greg Malling and the rest of the Warhawks. But again, an impressive showing for them in the final.
And Greg Malling, 2 years ago, when this is his second year at the helm, he was replacing a legend in Tom Taraska, and there was definitely some hesitance there in the Arrowhead community. They'd been a running football team for so long, had perfected it. Here came this guy from out of state with a little bit of a spread offense. Nobody really knew what to expect. It took him 2 years to create the most dominant program in the state. I mean, that team just had everything, playmakers on every level on defense, tremendous offensive game plan with a number of weapons, and they were able to roll up 35 points in the first half. I think they wound up setting the state record by 1 yard for passing yards in a Division I title game, along with I think 5 other state records. So this is a tremendous performance by Arrowhead. I felt they were favored. Even I didn't see them coming away with a 35-0 lead at halftime. They truly were the best program in the state.
Yeah, and it's rare to see that running clock in the state final.
Right.
So that said, as we close the book on the football season, another book opens. Boys basketball has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and we've already had some big showdowns. One in the Woodland Conference, New Berlin-Eisenhower and New Berlin West. New Berlin-Eisenhower came out a big winner in that particular game. Let's hear what Coach Dave Scheidegger had to say about the win.
Well, I thought all the kids did their roles. Defensively, obviously, was a wonderful effort tonight to hold that squad of West down like that. It's just everybody did well, not just one. It is very early in the season. Everybody's got a ton to work on, but yeah, there are some big games early. Not that they all aren't, but yeah, this is a good start.
Well, Eisenhower is going to be one of the favorites in the Woodland Conference again, probably along with maybe newcomer Milwaukee Pius. There's so much to talk about with boys basketball, but from your standpoint, just give me some of your thoughts. What are you looking forward to? What intrigues you as we enter this season?
I'm really curious to see how the senior class performs across the state of Wisconsin. This is really one of the deepest classes we've seen in a long time. You got a guy like Luke Fisher at Germantown, the #1 team in the state by most people's, that's their perception of it so far. He's a 6'10" center. He's going to Indiana, which is the #1 basketball team in the country, and he might be the 6th or 7th best senior in the class. I mean, it's certainly subjective when you look at it that way, but with Deontay Burton at Marquette, Bronson Koenig out in Aquinas, who's going to go to Wisconsin, Matt Thomas, who's at Onalaska, he's going to Iowa State. I mean, I could go up and down, and there's so many talented players in the senior class. So it's really an exciting year for Wisconsin prep basketball because there are a lot of guys that are going to go to Division I universities.
Yeah, and there were, from my standpoint, there were a lot of coaching changes, especially around the area that are going to have people talking or going to have people excited about their respective programs. You talked about Deontay Burton. The coach at Milwaukee Vincent is Marcus Hines, who used to be at Homestead. The Homestead coach, Kevin McKenna, used to be at Grafton.
Right.
Grafton's new coach, Bob Moronde, won 2 state titles
with the girls
with the Grafton girls. So there's a lot of intrigue.
The Dominican coach, Dwayne Wilson, a player I didn't mention in that senior class. Right. They got a new coach there too.
Right. Yeah, Derek Berger, a former player at Dominican. So there are a lot of coaching changes that are gonna that I'm gonna be watching, and that's really kind of just to see what effect these new guys can have in their respective programs.
Right. One guy I'm really looking forward to seeing play, I haven't seen him play to this point, is Milwaukee Hamilton Jr. Kevin Looney. He drops 50 points in his season opener and then comes back a couple games later and scores 44, I think, against Milwaukee Destiny in a very close game, so it wasn't like a blowout necessarily against lesser competition. Hamilton isn't maybe at the level, at least in the preseason rankings, as some of the other teams in the city conference, but they've got 2 of the best players in the area. Looney, as a junior, some people are talking like he might be the best player Wisconsin has produced in years, and that's saying something because we've seen some incredible players come through lately. Most recently, of course, Sam Decker and JP Tokido last year from Sheboygan Lutheran and Menominee Falls, respectively. I mean, before that, Wes Matthews, Marcus Landry, Jamil Wilson, Jerron Mayman. We've had a lot of great players recently, so I'd really be interested to see his game and see how he matches up with some of the greats the state has produced.
Yeah, and the one thing about Hamilton is, Tom Diener doesn't have to play a lot of guys to be successful. A lot of times these 6, 7 guys. A couple years ago, he went to state pretty much with five guys he played a lot. So you got Looney and you got David Burrell, who's another junior, who are probably their most experienced guys. And then after that, there are a lot of unknowns. But, as they showed last week, they beat McGuanago, which is the favorite in the Classic 8.
Yeah, that win over McGuanago, a quality victory against a team that brings 10 letter winners back. They went to the sectional final last year. That's one of the teams I cover. I'm really curious to see how McGuanago does over the course of the year. Their girls program has really turned it around in the second week, and I know we're going to have to start talking more about girls basketball probably starting next week.
Right, yeah, we'll hold off on that conversation next week. We'll also talk more boys basketball. But that wraps it up for this week's edition of Preps Plus Extra. For more Preps Plus action, you can watch me and Lance Allen every Sunday night on today's TMJ4. Take care.